Oliver Bearman was traveling at 308 kilometers per hour when Franco Colapinto's Alpine suddenly shed 50 kilometers per hour in front of him with no warning, no mechanical failure, and no driver error. Just the regulations working exactly as designed. The resulting impact registered at 50 G, a number that belongs in a barrier test, not a race at Suzuka. Bearman walked away with a bruised knee. The sport walked away with a problem it can no longer ignore. To understand why Bearman crashed, you first need to understand what changed under the hood. The 2026 power unit regulations represent the most significant technical overhaul in modern Formula One history. According to Formula1.com's technical analysis, the new hybrid architecture tripled the output of the motor generator unit Kinetic from 120 kilowatts to 350 kilowatts, creating a near 50/50 split between internal combustion power and electrical power. That is an enormous shift. For context, under the previous regulations, roughly 20% of total power came from electricity. Now, it's half. Here is the critical flaw. The battery capacity was not increased proportionally. Triple the electrical demand, same reservoir. This means cars burn through their battery allocation far faster during deployment and must harvest or recharge far more aggressively to compensate. The FIA designed these regulations deliberately with what they describe as adjustable parameters regarding energy management, allowing teams to choose when and where on track to deploy or recover energy. That flexibility, intended to reward strategic thinking, has instead produced something no one fully anticipated on track: violent and unpredictable speed differentials between cars in proximity. As documented in post-race technical reviews from Autosport and Motorsport.com, a car in full deployment mode and a car in full harvest mode at the same point on track can now differ in speed by 40 to 50 kilometers per hour speeds that previously only existed between a Formula One car and a backmarker. The Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka brought this issue to a brutal and undeniable head. According to Haas's official post-race data, Bearman was traveling at 308 kilometers per hour, approaching Spoon Corner. At that same moment, Colapinto's Alpine had switched into harvesting mode, immediately reducing his speed to approximately 260 kilometers per hour. That is a closing speed differential of 48 kilometers per hour in one of the fastest and most committed sections of any circuit on the calendar. Bearman had no time to brake. He swerved onto the grass, hit the brake markers, and slammed into the barrier. The impact, per official FIA telemetry data cited by multiple outlets, was 50 G. In the post-race media session, Bearman was direct. "We've, as a group, warned the FIA what can happen, and this has been a really unfortunate result of a massive delta speed that we've never seen before in Formula One until these new regulations." What makes this particularly significant is the location. Suzuka has generous runoff areas. As GPDA chairman Carlos Sainz stated publicly after the race, "We were lucky there was a runoff area." Now imagine going to Baku, Singapore, or Las Vegas and crashing into walls with these kinds of speed differences. Street circuits lined with concrete barriers offer no such margin for error. The FIA released an official statement acknowledging the situation and confirmed that several meetings are scheduled in April to assess the functioning of the new regulations and determine whether adjustments are required. Beyond the safety dimension, the 2026 regulations have fundamentally altered the nature of Formula One racing itself, and the drivers are not shy about saying so. The phenomenon, now widely referred to as super clipping, occurs when a car's MGU-K is placed into harvest mode while still at full throttle, redirecting kinetic energy from the rear wheels into the battery. The result is a measurable and abrupt speed reduction on straights and through high-speed corners, the exact sections where cars run closest together. Fernando Alonso summarized the situation with characteristic bluntness, telling media, "What's fun about overtaking by accident? Nowadays, overtaking happens by chance. Suddenly, you have more battery than the car in front, and then you either crash or pass them. It's an avoidance maneuver, not a real overtake." Alonso went further in his post-race Suzuka debrief, noting that roughly 50% of the Aston Martin team could drive the car at Suzuka because the high-speed corners had effectively become mandatory charging zones rather than driving tests. Lando Norris described how he unintentionally overtook Lewis Hamilton at one point in the season due to an involuntary battery deployment, stating, "It's just about the battery deploys. And I don't want it to deploy, but I can't control it." Charles Leclerc compared the electrical boost deployment to the mushroom in Mario Kart, a comparison that is both amusing and deeply revealing about how artificial the performance differences have become. Oscar Piastri, watching the Bearman crash replay in the Suzuka cool-down room alongside Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli, openly agreed. As documented by Sky Sports F1 in their Suzuka race review, even race winner Kimi Antonelli acknowledged the issue, describing certain phases of the race as feeling like driving with handcuffs. What makes this regulatory crisis particularly pointed is not just the incidents themselves, it is the timeline of warnings that preceded them. The Grand Prix Drivers Association began formally raising concerns about the 2026 energy management rules as early as the Australian Grand Prix, the opening round of the season. According to statements published by the GPDA and covered in detail by Autosport, drivers warned repeatedly that the speed differentials created by harvest versus deploy mismatches represented a new and serious category of risk. Carlos Sainz, serving as GPDA director, stated after Japan, "We warned that this kind of accident would happen. As GPDA, the drivers' union, we warned the FIA that these accidents would happen under these rules, and that we need to change something quickly if we don't want them to happen." The FIA did implement one in-race adjustment at Suzuka. For qualifying, drivers were restricted to harvesting 8 megajoules of energy per lap instead of the standard 9 megajoules, with the stated aim of reducing the need for energy saving and allowing drivers to push closer to the limit. Per Formula1.com, all 5 power unit manufacturers unanimously backed the change. However, the response from the drivers was lukewarm at best. Bearman noted the adjustment would reduce overall car performance. Norris gave perhaps the starkest assessment of how drivers feel their concerns are being processed, telling reporters, "It doesn't matter. I might as well say nothing. It makes no difference. As long as the fans enjoy it, that's all that counts." When asked whether drivers also need to enjoy racing, he replied simply, "Apparently not." With the April stakeholder meetings confirmed and Miami on the horizon as the potential first race for revised regulations, the technical discussion has become increasingly specific. According to Motorsport.com's technical team, 2 primary directions are under consideration. The first is a reduction in maximum electrical deployment, bringing the MGU-K output ceiling down from 350 kilowatts to either 250 kilowatts or 200 kilowatts. Lower deployment power means the battery lasts proportionally longer per lap, reducing both the frequency and severity of harvest phases. The trade-off is reduced headline horsepower figures. The second approach involves raising the super clipping threshold, meaning cars can harvest more total energy per lap, giving drivers a larger battery buffer and reducing the urgency of aggressive recovery phases. This preserves performance but requires agreement from power unit manufacturers who have already homologated their designs around specific parameters. George Russell added a third, more targeted request in his post-Japan debriefs published by Sky Sports F1, specifically addressing safety car and formation lap scenarios. That harvest limit on the formation lap or under the safety car needs to go. I understand why that limit is needed during a fast lap, but on a formation lap or under the safety car, it makes no sense at all. It just causes problems. At the Japan restart, Russell was at his harvest limit, causing multiple cars to pass him involuntarily. The FIA statement confirmed that any changes, particularly those relating to energy management, will require careful simulation and detailed analysis, a necessary caveat, but one that does little to reduce the risk at circuits running in the meantime. 3 races into the 2026 season, and Formula One finds itself navigating a technical and sporting crisis that is simultaneously a safety emergency, a competitive integrity issue, and a credibility challenge. The 50G impact at Suzuka was not a freak accident. It was the predictable outcome of regulations that tripled electrical demand without proportionally expanding battery capacity. then gave teams full discretion over when to harvest and deploy, creating the conditions for extreme and unpredictable speed differentials in proximity racing. Drivers warned. The GPDA formally notified the FIA from the Australian Grand Prix onward, and Suzuka delivered the consequence they feared. The April meetings will determine whether Formula One moves toward a solution before Miami, or whether the sport continues to test the limits of its safety margins at circuits where Suzuka's grass runoff does not exist. The FIA has committed to working with all stakeholders, with safety remaining a core part of its mission. The drivers, for their part, are watching and, as Lando Norris made clear, quietly doubting whether their voices carry the weight they should. Max Verstappen, one of the most vocal critics of the current regulations, summed up the situation with characteristic directness, saying simply that F1 and the FIA know what they need to do. The question is not technical. The solution architecture exists. The question is whether the sport acts before the next incident or after.